Republican Senate leader Mitch McConnell threatened corporations who get involved in political issues, like Georgia's recently passed election law. In recent years, more and more brands, in recent days, like the MLB and Delta, they've been outspoken on social issues. So with big business and the GOP historically getting along, where did things go wrong? And where will it leave Democrats, Republicans, and corporate America? Here to discuss is a Bloomberg News editor-at-large, Marty Shanker. Hey, Marty, great to see you and have you join us on this. So you've been covering business since the 1970s. Give us some historical context about what we've seen in recent years and even in recent days when it comes to the way that companies are actually weighing in politics.
Well, I started off in life at the Wall Street Journal in the early 70s, and even from that point, companies scrupulously avoided taking public positions of that involved any controversy for the obvious reasons. You risk alienating your customers, you risk alienating your employees. So when you went to companies for comment on a big social issue, you never got any on the record. But the world has changed in the last, 10 years, 5 years, with social media and the ability of customers to give instantaneous feedback to companies via Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or any of the other social platforms.
So where does it leave companies right now? Do they have to take a stand?
Well, that's really what I think corporate boardrooms and corporate communications apparatuses are grappling with. Can they afford to stay silent on issues that are quite clearly passionate issues for their customers and their employees? Because in some cases they consider silence, actually support for a controversial issue. So I think, as in the case of the Major League Baseball, is a stark example of where, in my view, it was the players who really forced their hand on that issue for them to abandon the All-Star game.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point, because it is not just about customers, right? It's about attracting employees, it's about retaining employees and making sure that your employees are actually working for a company that you believe in. But is that a relatively new phenomenon?
It is a relatively new phenomenon. I think that, the idea that you take a job and that the corporation doesn't really have a role in the social issues that surround you has always been the case. So you never really had to think about it when you picked who you're working for. I think the generational change that's happened is that, in fact, it does matter what the stand is of the companies that you work for. And you can see how young millennials are picking their companies more carefully based on their stance on a whole range of issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to ESG or when it comes to social responsibility, I oftentimes think of what Milton Friedman said in 1970 about the social responsibility of a company is to use its resources and engage in activities designed to increase its profits so long as it stays within the rules of the game. Does that hold true in this day and age?
Well, Milton Friedman, the father of deregulation, is probably an outlier thinker, and it worked at the time where he had a following, but I don't think it works anymore. I think even BlackRock's Larry Fink said famously a couple of years ago, companies can't just view profits as their final responsibility. They have to take other large social issues into consideration when they're pursuing their business.
So I think back to a Wall Street Journal editorial that I saw yesterday or the day before, and it talks about somebody who as a customer, does not agree with a lot of the positions that brands have taken. And this writer wrote about how he stopped using Gillette because of an advertisement from Procter & Gamble, or wrote about not drinking the coffee that he used to and drinking a different type of coffee. Can brands afford to, and companies, can they afford to alienate a certain portion of consumers here?
Well, it's very interesting because obviously taken to the ridiculous extreme, we will consume nothing from anyone.
Right.
Because there will be something that they do that you could conceivably think of as offensive. And it does also, it's a dangerous thing for free speech and expression if you have to worry about offending any customer with anything creative that can be interpreted in the wrong way. And so, you know, taken to an extreme, if advertisers tried to be neutral all the time, we'd be bored out of our minds.
I wonder also if customers actually care to a certain extent, right? Like, are they going to buy the plane ticket that's the cheapest and gets them where they want to go at the time that they want to get there? Or are they going to say, okay, yes, I am going to fly Delta, or no, I'm not going to fly Delta for all of the reasons above?
Well, when you have a choice, you may be able to make that decision based on that kind of issue. But I think, Tim, you're absolutely right. Ultimately, the economic arguments may win out over the social conscious.
Yeah, maybe if you want to watch baseball, you're going to watch baseball regardless of where the game is being held.
Then I think the All-Star game will be watched in Denver as well as it would have been in Georgia.
So where does this leave the next few years, and where companies are going to be going from here?
I think it's going to be a more vigorous and very chaotic course. And I think it's going to really involve politics. I think Bloomberg Opinion had a column today how the Republican Party may choose to use this woke issue among companies as a rallying cry against Democrats in the upcoming midterm elections. Not against the candidates, but against companies that take socially responsible positions and try to rail against that.
Look, it's notable because if you think about where corporate America has been politically, it's traditionally been aligned with Republicans, not just in recent years, but historically as well. And you see a lot of the executives who have donated money to Republican causes, and it's certainly benefited them from regulation or lack thereof.
Yeah, but then you look at big tech and you see that they're very socially responsible responses to a lot of these issues. You know, it may be that the third party in the U.S. are actually corporations. There are the Democrats, the Republicans, and there's corporations. And they're going to kind of battle it out to seek public support.
Marty Shanker, thank you so much for taking the time and for joining us on this.
My pleasure, Tim.
Great.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.